be so many directions.
Well, that's the thing. That's why we love this show so much, because we start with a topic and then we go all these different directions, which is so much fun.
It's so much fun. We
Yeah.
always have fun.
Yes, indeed.
This is WGSN-DB, Going Solo Network Radio, TV and podcast #1 Internet Singles Talk Network. And this is the fun Let's Talk Dating with Christine and Barry.
Hi, Christine.
With the fun Christine and the fun Barry.
Indeed, indeed.
So we were talking about, we think this could be an additionally fun conversation today. So our subject today is how to discuss each other's preferences. And wow, because we're going to start out in the same place again. Do you know what your preferences are? What are your preferences?
Exactly.
In every area of your life, period, and certainly in your relationships.
Right.
And if y'all are watching the video, you'll get to see that the picture's quite sensuous. We liked the picture that our producer Cece put up for this. So we certainly will definitely dive into sexual preferences and discussing that. And also I was thinking some of the other things are, are you a morning person? Are you a night person? Do you like lots of time together? Do you need more time alone?
Right.
And I just I reposted a thing that I had posted on Facebook, I don't know, it's probably 3 years ago, about men or women. If men ask you where you want to eat, please tell them, because he really does want to know where you want to eat.
I saw that, yeah.
So there you are, starting with this you think it's such a benign preference, and it can turn into a fight.
Oh, God, can it? The thing I want to speak to is right up front, because you mentioned the sexual piece, but I want another piece of that, which is that the idea of discussing each other's preferences is usually something that really tends to be easier when you have intimacy, on whatever level that is. Not to mention sex only, because we've talked this many times before, that sexuality and intimacy are not the same thing. But the languaging of that, of what each other's preferences are, can get quite intimate yourself about what is your intimate preference. Not just when you want to eat dinner, but also, when you get upset, how do you want to be held? How do you want to be listened to? Do you want to have your own space? When you are dealing with healing past wounds. I mean, these are very intimate things that aren't usually the first thing you talk about on the first date.
Boy, is that the truth. And are you prepared to figure out if they're the right person for that? And what sorts of things are you going to talk about ahead of time that are your preferences? And even if you're going to start out meeting the very first time, typically, I'd say the majority of the time, the men have asked me if I have a preference where I'd like to meet. And I do. And I tell them. And I typically give them a couple of options. Because if I say, I don't care, but I really do, which is often what happens for women,
yes,
then he's left guessing, and he doesn't know that much about me, especially for meeting for the first time. Because if I have a preference where I'd like to have coffee, I want it to feel casual, I want to make sure it's in the middle of the day, I want to make sure there's a bunch of people around, I want to make sure I could exit in half an hour to 45 minutes if it doesn't go well, then I need to say, I would really like to meet at Starbucks. I actually do live between 3 Starbucks. So I could tell them a Starbucks, and I could give them a coffee bean, and I could give them a coffee, tea, and leaf, or whatever it is. So I have 3 different places I could tell them besides the 3 different Starbucks. Yeah. If my preference is I'd like to meet for a walk, or I'd like to meet for ice cream, or I'd like to meet for a real lunch, it's important if they ask me, for me to say, what's my preference for a first meeting?
Yeah. And
don't you want to know, as a guy, if you've asked what my preference is, so you could fulfill it?
Absolutely. The thing is, the worst thing is when she says, I don't mind, choose what you want. Then I feel like I've got to be a mind reader because I know that my preferences might not match exactly what she wants. And if I choose something she doesn't want, she's going to hate me for it. And I'm like, the internal dialogue for men, when we have one, it can be very challenging to get through, because we are stuck in a place where we think she expects us to know what she wants.
Yeah.
And that isn't easy, and nor is it something we're naturally tuned into. So please, ladies, listen to what Christine said. Give the men a couple of suggestions so he can choose one that he knows she will like, because it takes the pressure off him.
Yeah. Well, and you said you think that you should be able to read our minds, and we think you should be able to read our minds. I mean, it's kind of a lose-lose for everybody,
Yeah.
where I need to really figure out what it is I need and want and tell you in my nicest way, this is what would make me happier. This is really where I like going, or gosh, I really like having coffee, or I like having lunch. You know, I really like salads. And here's a couple places I enjoy salads in my neighborhood, because of course you're going to come to my neighborhood because you're going to make the effort to see me the first time.
Right.
So what's really interesting is I'm going to meet a new person on Sunday, and he's been fascinated that I ride horses, and he doesn't, but he'd really like to learn. So I
Right.
said, okay, here's a place near me that rents horses and we could go riding. He has left voice messages and sent emails, and they're not getting back to him. So he said, okay, I'm going to suggest something and you can tell me what you think. And he said, how about bowling? I said, I'm really bad and I like it. He goes, well, people tell me I bowl like Fred Flintstone, so we'll be together. I said, I'll be like Wilma. I said, so here's a place where I live that I've been to and I like it, and we'll go in the middle of the day. And he was perfectly fine with that.
Right.
But it was really an interesting conversation back and forth about how to work out that it wasn't going to be coffee or lunch. So I wanted to know this. We were going to go horseback riding. Now we're going to go bowling. But I think that's a fine way to get to know each other the first time.
Well, that's the other part too, is especially if you don't live like in the same local vicinity and you're going to visit the other person where they are. And if a man's going to go do the effort, which yes, he should make the effort to go close to where she is. The odds are likely that he doesn't know anything around the area where she lives, and she does. So if he does, she doesn't give him the clues of like this coffee shop, this bowling alley, this place, all these different things.
Yeah.
He's basically rolling the dice, very unlikely to win. So, ladies, again, if he's taking the effort to come to where you live, the area you live in, not to your house, to the area you live in, please be kind enough to give him some places you can meet at that make it easier for him to choose, so that way you win and he wins.
Yeah.
Much better.
So he's driving an hour to come bowling with me on Sunday afternoon.
There you go.
I'll let you know how it goes. So the other thing is, so we can go back to the first meeting again.
Yeah.
My preference at a first meeting when I'm going to meet a man for the first time is I stick out my hand. I'm really happy to shake hands with them the first time. That's what makes me the most comfortable. So I appreciate when man waits to see what the heck I'm going to do, and he'll shake my hand. And then after we've spent time together, coffee, lunch, bowling, if I feel comfortable enough, I hug them goodbye because I want to see how it feels to hug them.
Yeah.
But that's all I'm going to do the first time. So my preference, I don't generally say it out loud. I would if they didn't respond, but I'm really clear about this is what I'm doing the first point, and this is what I'm doing the second time.
Right.
And there's not been only a couple people who went in to do something more, and I was like, I'm doing this. And I said, I prefer a hug the
Right.
first time we met to say goodbye. And they're like, okay. So because they don't know what you want and what you're comfortable with in general, and certainly how you're feeling with them. So for that instance, I am giving physical cues, but I have no trouble giving a verbal cue as well, verbal instructions.
And again, layers upon layers. This is another piece. The preference piece is saying, well, there's a couple of us coming up for this one. One is that for us men, the easier it is for us to be with you, the better. So the more we are clue here, listening to what she asks for and watching what she does, the easier it's going to get. I mean, this sounds so simplistic, but this is basic stuff that so many men, unfortunately, have steamrolled through without thinking about it, oblivious even, and not even concerned about what she's asked for, what she wants, and what she declares as a boundary. And we wonder why she doesn't like us anymore. Yeah. It's like, no, if you are willing to take a moment to stop running your own tape as a man and listen to what she's saying and watch what she's doing to indicate to you what she's actually asking for, you can honor the preference she has. Yep. It's actually kind of easy when we do that, but it's not always easy to get there.
No. And I'm going to ask a question because certainly my preference the first couple of times of meeting is I want to feel safe. I want to get to know you. I want to feel like you want to get to know me. And I want to ultimately feel comfortable enough that I want to see you again. And I imagine that a man, his highest priority is to have me feel all those things. That his preference is to figure out what's going to make me feel safe, what's going to make me feel comfortable, what's going to make me want to see him again if he wants to see me again.
You're right.
That's a big assumption, but I'm going to go on that.
Yeah.
And that your preferences for what you personally want would usually get put by the wayside because a bigger, higher priority of a preference is what is it that's going to make me like you, feel comfortable with you, want to be with you. Is that a good assumption on my part?
To a point, yes.
Yes, but I want you to address it because I'm not a guy.
Absolutely, there is a part for most men. I can't speak for all men, but I believe for most men, yes, we want to have our prospective date be comfortable so they can trust us, that we feel safe and we feel like we can be okay with her as well. Not that we're putting up behavior, we're going to be natural, hopefully dealing be ourselves anyway. So we're not like presenting a persona that we're not to make her feel comfortable. That's not going to work anyway. And at the same time, one thing that does happen, and at least maybe it's just for me, I don't think, maybe it's for other guys too, but if she is presenting her preferences and what works for her, and they do not work for me, I'm going to say, I appreciate where you're coming from, but my preferences are different from that.
Mm.
So not just we don't date it again. I mean, the thing is, and this is a whole nother talk we've had before about ghosting and such, is that it's tempting sometimes to just simply go quiet, not say anything, and then not call her back again, not follow up, not go on another date. It's a level of ownership and respect to say in that conversation where things do not match, do not line up, because maybe her religious beliefs and yours don't match up, or some other thing comes up that's so different, you do not fit. Say, I really like getting to know you, and your preference for this totally goes across what I believe is works for me or what I prefer for myself. This isn't going to work out.
No.
And it's okay that way. Again, not against the other person, just like this is where we have different opinions. That's great, different preferences. But it's so rare, frankly, I believe, for individuals to meet up and find they have contrasting or conflicting preferences and actually speak about it. Because one thing is, this is the funny part, when you start talking about these things, you might discover suddenly that some of these preferences don't actually make sense anymore. You've been running tapes from way back when that don't fit anymore, but we have a tendency to just default to regular behavior because it's easier, it's more comfortable. But when we actually are, I'll say the word confronted, but when we are certainly introduced to a different perspective of preferences from the other person, is what we hold true for ourselves accurate or not? If it is, great, honor it, stand up for it, speak for it, and then you're okay. Yeah. But if it's not, maybe I'll reconsider that maybe what you've been offered is something even better, perhaps. Oh. So it's a good chance to get to know yourself as well when you're in this conversation.
Well, isn't that conscious dating that we talk about a lot? Oh my gosh, paying attention to what's going on inside of yourself.
Indeed.
Yeah, I have one male client currently that he really wants to kiss them goodbye. Not some big old long passionate thing, but it's really important to him. So I said, I'm not going to tell you what to do or not do physically. I am just going to say, please tell them if it looks like the date's going well. This is what I'd really like to do at the end of our meeting when I walk you to your car. What do you think? And it was an interesting thing the first time he did it because the woman was startled because nobody's ever said that to her before.
Right.
And I said, let her. And she did. She thought about it and she went, okay. And so I said, and when they say yes, then ask them, how would you have felt if I had just tried? And this one said, oh, I'm not sure I would have liked it, but I really like that you asked. Now, I'm here to say we're all so different. Every woman has such a different preference. And someday it's the day of the week or the time of the month. I can say that out loud. So I'm not saying this works for every woman. I am not. But it was a really fun experiment for me to have this guy that it was really important to him. A hug was not enough. I'm like, okay, ask.
Right.
Because I was thinking, how would I respond since I'm a hugger at the end of the first date? And I'd have to see how I felt about him. So it would be 50-50 whether I'd say yes or no. But it was a very fun experiment to do with this guy. And he was very game because I said, if they say no, that doesn't mean they don't want to see you again. They just say no to a kiss the first time.
Right.
So that was pretty fun.
It's like a not yet then, basically, rather than a no fully.
Yes. And often women tell me, for a variety of reasons, they like offering to pay. They like paying their way. Well, I'm now been saying, tell them why. I felt like some men have wanted me to pay them back other ways if I didn't pay for my food. And that's been really uncomfortable to let the guy go, oh, yeah, that's so not me. And I really do want to buy you dinner. And I don't need more than that. Thank you. Because this has all been sort of underground, these conversations that both men and women are having in their head. And you know me, I'm having people have these conversations out loud. Like, I want you to stop having that inside your head conversation, but say it in this really nice way. Because what you're going to do is give this guy a chance to go, well, yeah, they were jerks. I'm not. I wouldn't do that. And then you get to like him even more. And he gets to show you more of him. And you got to say your concern out loud and see how they respond.
Right.
How about that?
This whole conversation is really clearly indicating to me how more visible we can be in our connection with each other. Because that's the part of this thing. There's so many, as you said, on the ground, those unspoken, invisible, hidden agendas that people carry. You know, kissing on the first date or hugging, whatever those things are. That if we actually expose them to the light and say, this is what I prefer, it's easy to see and it's safer. Because again, this whole thing about building trust is from a place of being visible and being seen by the other person as honest. Mm-hmm. If you have this sort of desire to kiss them, but you don't tell them about it, it feels like a sneak attack sometimes. Yeah. Yes, maybe you think somebody might, it's romantic to have to happen. I haven't had many experiences with different women where it did or didn't work. I know both sides of the conversation, and definitely and I haven't done this yet, so I'm just being transparent, to say up front early on in the conversation, or at least a certain part of the date before you walk into the car, if we like each other, I'd love to kiss you at the end of the date. I haven't done that before, just to be transparent. And I really feel that's take the pressure off to do that. You know?
And what good practice for both people to figure out their preferences and say it out, be daring, be brave, be bold, and say it out loud. This is what I prefer. What do you prefer? It's such a good foundation for yourself in your life with everybody. And then to see, how does this person respond? Because later on, there's going to be bigger reasons to have a conversation, more important reasons, more charged, more pieces of your heart,
personal,
more chemistry going on. And if you haven't practiced, that's when we all go blah, 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 or don't say anything at all. You know, the crazy stuff comes out of our mouth that we like, who was that? Or we just edit and filter and don't say anything. So that's why I like that people would start out right away. Because if the other person isn't the right person, you're going to find out pretty fast.
I'm a big proponent of finding out fast.
And since we know I move slow about everything, I'm going to say this is something I'm very happy to go fast about.
Right, because the great thing is that if you are at the dating arena, do you want to spend 3 months slow dating with somebody, spend lots of money and time with them to find they're not the right person? The sooner you find out, the better. And you move on to somebody else who may be the right person. So this preference discussion can really be it's like finding a path through the maze sort of thing. It gives you, it's like a dividing rod in a way. Having clarity of preferences will guide you, because you'll have a lot of people that go, no, yes. That sort of procedural thing. So it's a mechanical thing in a way, but the power of it is so powerful for having the chance to connect with somebody, have an amazing relationship when you've sort of separated out the people who don't fit your preferences. So discussing is a good thing.
And then there's times you go, I never thought of it that way, or I never thought about that. I mean, that's really kind of a fun. I've had a couple of those conversations lately going, I never thought about it quite like that. So then as you're moving into having more dates together, you know, one of the things that women complain about constantly is he doesn't call enough, or he doesn't text enough. I mean, I know there's women that think whatever I'm saying I like is way too much. Generally, a lot of women complain about this.
Yeah.
So I am really clear. if we start seeing each other regularly, that I really like a good morning text, and I really like a good night text, and I like a how are you doing in the middle of the day text. And I will always say, thank you. I noticed, I appreciate it when you do it every time.
Yeah.
And they do it, most of them. And the ones that can't, it probably isn't going to last, because that's a really big thing to me. And the ones who can, sometimes they'll say, well, my day is really full and it's really hard, and I could do morning and night, and I'm up really early, so will it disturb you? I mean, I've had those conversations with men that go so smoothly. But here's another way where you're saying to them, this is what I'd like, and he gets to say to you, well, this is what I like. I really like if a couple days a week you reached out to me. I had one man say that, and I was like, gosh, I could do that. I haven't been asked that very much before. Usually they just keep reaching out to me. I'm pretty spoiled about that. You'd like me to? Okay, I could do that a couple days a week. I still would prefer you do more. I said it out loud, but I will a couple times. And it worked okay. But it was like, well, Christine's getting the words right back to her, because it's not like you guys don't get to say your preference too. I so don't want to say. I wanted to make sure I said that out loud in this, because it's equal. It's so equal. Oftentimes we have different needs. Sometimes we have the same need and we want it differently. And sometimes we even want the same need the same way. But if you don't tell, how's somebody going to know?
Right.
And you're going to feel frustrated. So saying what you need and want all along the way, both people, and it doesn't mean it's a deal breaker if they're even far apart. I mean, as you said, in the first date, you're going to figure out if there's things that you just like, I go to church every day, I never go to church, or I only go on Sunday. Is there a middle ground? Too hard, probably. But there's lots of places where you can get closer, where you can say, oh, I could do this much and I could do this much. And is that good enough? Do both people think that's good enough? And I think that that's an even more important conversation to have as you're going through getting to know each other better.
It's interesting that the clarity of asking for what you want, but also the accommodation you make for somebody else too. And I know, I mean, looking back at my own history, because I can always refer to that easily, I definitely made accommodations for other people's preferences that didn't match mine to be with them, because I thought it was worth being with them. But ultimately the preferences won out, and it's the way it works, I believe. It's like, yes, we can have the chemistry where no matter what's in the way, we'll say, yes, I want to be with this person, until it isn't.
Yeah.
Until the chemistry doesn't have the strength to outweigh the preferences. So, and it's interesting because, just sidebar slightly, we've talked in previous talks about red flags and green flags, about must-haves and cannot-haves. Preferences do lie in the middle in the sense, because they are on the spectrum of these needs and wants. At the same time, some of these preferences can become deal breakers. So understanding that your ownership of your preferences makes you a better partner, because you're more honest and more clear and more available to the right person, is a gift that you give that person. Mm-hmm. When we don't own our preferences and speak to them in their dates and possibilities, we often tend to settle for less than we really want. And we tend also to put up with stuff we don't really want. Yep. So this talk may just change your life.
I'm hoping. Because everything, so settle and put up with, really are pretty negative words.
Absolutely.
So what I always strive for, me personally and my clients, is let's look at those things that you're feeling like you're settling or you're putting up with. Can they be ever soon become good enough? Because settling and putting up with feel really negative. Good enough does not feel negative. Good enough means I'm okay enough with it, and I'm going to not complain.
Okay.
That's really a hard agreement to have, but that is the agreement that I stress with my clients and with myself. Now, if you start feeling like, wow, it's more than I thought, it's different than they thought, if you're having the regular weekly meetings that I'm stressing so often, Barry and I talk about all the time,
yes,
you could say, I'm starting to feel a little concerned about this. It's starting to bother me more than I ever expected. I think we need to really revisit this. maybe it's my old stuff coming up. Maybe I didn't really understand what I was agreeing to. Let's have a really solid, honest conversation about this. And can we get back to good enough?
Yeah.
Because good enough, you could live with for 60 years. I could live with good enough for 60 years. I cannot live with the resentment that
Right.
would come from settling or putting up with something. That is how I end up hearing about people that we're just roommates. We pass in the night. We're not in love with each anymore. I love them, but we're not in love anymore. We
Right.
just aren't connected any that often. When I get to the bottom of it, that's the reason that's what started unraveling things. Was that little thread that just unraveled everything. And it's so sad and so unnecessary.
It's true. And the thing about this, and what I would distill out of that, is that preferences can change.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the thing, is that, as you said, and as I said too, is about having the weekly meetings, the check-ins, the relationship status meeting sort of thing, is a place where those things can come into, because with what people do normally is that preference they were okay with slid down into the, oh crap, this doesn't work for me type pile, and they don't say anything about it.
No.
They build resentment, or they should say, they don't say anything about it, but they act from it. So the resentment shows up, the expressions of disgust or disdain or hurtful feelings show up, and the rest of it was destroyed because there is no communication. And we talked in other episodes about having good communication. This is a piece of that. That when you have a check-in each week at least, or at most rather, you have it more less frequently if that works for you. But having a check-in to discuss the relationship and where it's going can include your preferences that shifted, which either maybe they went worse, maybe they got better too. Because the other ones where you go, what works for me now works better now because I really like what got going on here. But the ones that become, oh crap, it's now a deal breaker, that may be correctable if you have a conversation where the other person goes, oh, I didn't realize, and they can adjust theirs accordingly. The thing about having preferences, they are malleable or adjustable. So you can actually have a relationship that works when you work out each other's preferences. So these are not the hard and fast must-haves or deal breakers all the time. Some of them might border that area. We've got to be careful about them and be aware of them. But oftentimes they are the pieces in the middle, which are more malleable. So they can change and shift as needed. So when you check in, when somebody's started moving into being a red flag, the person might go, oh, yeah, I realize that wasn't appropriate for me now. I'll pull back from that one. So conversation and communication always helps this point forward.
Yep. So figuring out, where am I today? Where am I tomorrow? Where am I the next day? So that I can sort it out for myself first, and then tell my partner, wow, this shifted in me, and I wanted to share it with you because it's been really exciting what I've learned from doing this with you. Or, wow, I discovered that there's this other hard thing inside of me that's bumping up against this thing that we made an agreement for, and I need to talk about it again. And if you do it in this open-hearted, geez, I want to do this as a partnership. It's not that you screwed up or you did something wrong or I'm a bad person because I'm, falling back on whatever. If you go, right, wow, I'm being a human being. We're constant. I mean, the moon and the ocean and the stuff that's happening in the world, it affects us. It can't not affect us. So if we own, the other day I went to my volunteer thing and I said, and I'd had a little hard thing happen at Donna's house between the animals. And I said something and I go, wow, I am feeling crabby today. I need to do something I need to get back to my lobster. And the person I snapped at laughed at me because I was calling myself out going, I knew I was feeling edgy, but that it came out of my mouth. I was like, I had kind of a hard morning and I'm really sorry that and it wasn't even that big of a thing, but it's something I never did growing up. And I never really, I could say never, seldom in my first marriage, and decided that was not working well for me. So I'm saying I know that it's not a normal thing for lots of people to think about or do, and it feels hard and weird. And why would I do that? But I'm like, being the convert, oh my God, aren't we just crazy people when we're convert, when we reform something in our life? And like, it's so much better to say out loud, geez, I just need a little extra understanding today because the dog and cat had this fight and I had to pull them apart and I got all scratched up and it was such a shock. And I was still carrying it around inside of me because I hadn't told anybody and I needed to get it out instead of being crabby.
Yep, that's another piece of it too. Is sometimes before you have the conversation about preferences and discuss that stuff, you get out of the way what's ever in the way first, because there'll be a whole lot of agenda and other tapes that we recorded of things that happen in our day and our week that are in the way of that being clean. So that's a great example, having that understanding that what happened up to this point isn't necessarily what's involved in your conversation in this point. To be able to say, hang on a second, let me clear out what was in the way so we can have a clean conversation.
Yeah.
That's raising the bar quite a bit, which is awesome.
Because it's not how I normally speak. And I was like, ooh, listen to that crabby person coming out of my mouth. I think I need to address that. So we can't not talk about sex in this episode because we love talking about sex. So
it did drop into the beginning, so we got to talk about it.
How important and unfulfilling or really fulfilling sex is if you talk about it.
Oh, yeah.
This is what I like generally, both people. And this is what I think I'd like with you. Could we try that?
Right.
Or you do, and you're like, oh, I like that. Oh no, that isn't, I didn't know, or I do know that's not my favorite. Do you really want me to get turned on? Would you please do this instead? And the thing that I've really enjoyed with a couple of partners is we made a point of having a debriefing after. It was so much. The first one suggested, I was like, well, I'm so up for that. I'm up for that. And so afterward, we like, what did you like best? What would you like different? And what was really fun? And what I really liked, both. And it was like, wow, it was kind of like living the whole thing over again, which was pretty fun. And then you get so much information. And yes, it's not the same every time. I like different things, harder or softer, or I have more sensitive places or not. And generally, I can tell you at the time, but it was partly that, but it was mostly just fun to have somebody who wanted to have, no matter what he said, no matter what I said, was open and honest and no holds barred. That was fun. That was super fun.
I can just see you reliving it right now. But this is the thing, and it's saying what I said earlier, taking it to a much deeper level, literally, is the understanding that this conversation of intimacy works there as well. The thing is that sex is one of these interesting topics that isn't talked about in these environments. It's not talked about in the bedroom half the time either. And so the actual willingness to converse before, during, and after the debrief part isn't such a transformational experience for people that haven't done it before. And what's wonderful is that next time can be different because of what you said after this one.
Yeah.
Because there are times when you did certain things, you're like, oh, we'll never do that one again. Sort of extreme. But this piece really worked. Can we make that a focus next time? Having that up level or the improvement opportunities. It's like it's almost like, sorry, I'm just laughing because I was thinking about I just went through a series with a friend of mine, a workshop series. And again, did a feedback form. Just imagine after sex having feedback forms you fill out.
That's an interesting thought.
No, but having it in a communication method, meaning having a chance to discuss this and talk about it. So your feedback, because if you've ever done feedback forms, they're usually based on the premise of what did you learn, what worked, what didn't work, what can be improved.
Yes.
But if you cover those 4 questions in the conversation after sex,
oh yeah,
what was your experience? I had a great time. It was wonderful. What worked for you? Oh, this was really wonderful. What didn't work? Well, that didn't work so well. What could be improved? What would you do differently next time? So if you just have those 4 questions in your intimate post-coital experience and conversation to discuss preferences, you might be amazed how much your sex life improves.
Yeah. And in addition to the conversation was also, how you doing emotionally? Where are you? How's it going? This is the next time. How you doing with that? That was really wonderful because it's going to lead me into the into me see part of
Right.
the conversation in bed and out of bed,
Right.
where you're really sharing tender, important, sensitive parts about you to say, gosh, my preference is to have you just listen. I just need you to listen. Or I really need you to hold me when I have this conversation. And I recently experienced where I was telling somebody a tender story and they made a face. And I went, and it's been a face people have made before that was like, that's just too much information. And I said, oh, was that too much information? And he said, no, I was feeling a lot of empathy for what was going on with you. And I'm so glad I asked, because I've had so many times of a very similar looking face. I'm sure I was interpreting. I know there was some
Right.
of me, because I've seen it so much, because people ask me this question and I tell them about how my husband died. And he just was, when I heard him say those, I went, yeah, that's exactly how he felt. And so saying, oh, wow, I don't get that very often. That's why I jumped. It's so unusual. Wow, thank you for being so wonderful about your empathy. So I got to receive it. He got to receive doing it. But if I had just gone on with, yeah, it's just another person who thinks I've said too much, even though they asked me the question,
Right.
I would have had that same negative feeling that I've had before, which I understand. It's not a nice story, but it was so lovely to get somebody who completely responded different, and I got to find it out because I asked.
Yeah.
So if you're going to let somebody really listen to you and you're going to really listen to them, addressing your preferences then is as important as all these other subjects that we're talking about.
Absolutely. And the other thing as well, because something you said there, is when you notice something in the other person, check it out. Perception check. See if that person, like, is this what you were feeling? Because when they get made that face, your perception was based upon history, not necessarily about what they were feeling. So the good thing was is you asked, because they could go, no, what I felt was this. So part of preferences is to ask the obvious questions, because oftentimes we make assumptions and then we gloss over what needs to be talked about.
Yeah.
So this thing about preferences in all areas, from the first date to sexual, everything else in between and beyond, being willing to ask the obvious questions sometimes is the way through. It is the way to get more intimate. It's the way to get more understanding. It's the way to get more closeness from the communication. It's the assumptions and the, well, she must mean this or he must mean that gets in the way of that.
Mm-hmm.
So having the discussion about preferences, because it's the title, you know, how to discuss, it's almost like, no, discuss each other's preferences, period. And your own. So that way there's communication. So keep it clear.
Yeah. That assumption was based on lots of past experience,
Right.
and caught me completely off guard. And I'm really, really proud of me for asking, because my head was kind of swimming at that point, and I have felt myself pulling back from people because I'm like, yeah, why do you even ask if I'm going to tell you the story and then you're going to yuck. To have somebody want more, offer more was really astounding, actually.
Yeah.
And it's because of being brave to say out loud, what's going on for you? Because this is how it's feeling for me.
Absolutely.
It's so hard. It's so challenging. And I respect that, but the benefits will way outweigh the scary if it turns out you're both willing. You're both willing to talk about your preferences, even if it's not going to work out because you talked about your preferences and said, but as you mentioned earlier, it's going to come out eventually. You can't pretend forever.
No, not possible.
No.
Like
you need to own your real self and show your real self, allow them, encourage them to show their real selves so that you can say, can we work this out? Can we get to good enough and lots of wonderful?
Absolutely.
But the baseline has to be good enough. It can't be less than that.
Right.
Or it's not good. You're not going to last 60 years. I mean, my friend that I go riding with, that I stayed at her house while they went to their grandson's wedding, they'll be married 60 years next year. And this is what they've always done. And I so admire that. And my brother and sister-in-law have been married for almost 49 years. I admire that because that's what they do. And they've been such a good example for me.
Absolutely. The one more piece I want to add to that, because the thing that comes up, and I've shared this before as well, I know, is the statement, because we're trying to hear about being clear in your communication, about telling the truth and speaking up for yourself. One of the quotes I've used many times, one of the reframes you've many times with clients as well, is when all else fails, try honesty. And in this context, it's vital. There's such a tendency to make ourselves look good in the other person's eyes by making our preferences fit in a certain box. Yep. But what you really want is this over here, but you're just talking about this only here because you want to look good to the other person because you want to get in bed or whatever that is. The primary focus then is mislabeled, is misaligned. Because if you really are being honest to speak about what your preferences are, not what they should be, but what they are, you're going to either find someone that matches with, which is great, easy, awesome, or it's going to be somebody who doesn't fit that at all, which is also great, easy, awesome, because you get to walk away and be clear, room for the next one. And that's the mindset I think I would recommend having, because preferences can be deal breakers, as I mentioned earlier. And so it's important when you communicate that to be honest to yourself, again, like you said earlier about, self-investigation, self-reflection, self-awareness. So when you do speak about your preferences, they are the truth for you in that moment. Because honesty is transitory. It's not what you say one time is always the same case. It's true now. It might change down the road, but it's true now. So your preferences are honored, and so are you, by being honest with yourself. And when you speak to the other person, they can feel the honesty. Mm-hmm. They won't be feeling like, oh, we're just saying it to make me feel good. It's like, no. Yeah. It's honesty. And so part of the most pivotal pieces about discussing each other's preferences is to speak from your truth, just be honest with yourself and also the other person. Much healthier.
Wow. Yes. To be so honest with yourself that you won't accept being with somebody else who isn't just as honest about themselves.
Right.
And there really are so many things you can overcome if you are honest. Yeah. Because if you really are working on a partnership together, you are going to do all you can to help the other person get wherever there is, to right. whatever the place is that's going to make them the better person, and in turn make your relationship even better. And they'll help you be a better person to make your relationship better. And boy, I've seen some really hard bumps that people have gotten over and been better off on the other side, often because they finally were honest with each other, or they continue to be honest with each other. The honesty piece, I'm glad you said that word, is so important.
Absolutely.
It's so important to yourself and the other person.
It's the way to live life.
Yep. You and I do it in spades, and that's what we love to teach people who are wondering about it or worried about it or haven't experienced it, or they really know what they are, but they just keep not finding people that feel the same way. And Barry and I can help with that, right?
Yes, we can.
This is what we do.
Yeah.
We will have honest conversations with you.
Indeed. So how can they find you?
To figure out your preferences. Thank you, Barry. What a nice question to ask. So the way to find me is through my website, which is www.theperfectcatch.com, and click on What's Holding You Back from Love, and that will schedule you a complimentary conversation with me. You can also join my mailing list, and you'll get anything that's happening for me in the world and in my world, and also a repeat of this podcast. You can also send me an email at my personal email at Christine@theperfectcatch.com. Also on my website, you can find me on all my social media. They're all at the bottom, the little symbols of Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter and Instagram and Pinterest and YouTube.
Nicely
I'm getting better at it, huh?
Yes, you are.
And Barry, please tell them how to reach you.
Certainly. My website is my name, so it's easy to find, so barryselby.com. Currently, for a little bit longer, because it is changing soon. They're almost there. You're talking about this assessment. It's coming together. But right now, if you go to my website, at the front page at the top, you can click on the link to get started with the first step, which is a discovery session with me. So in a private conversation, when we talk about what your goals are, where you are and where you want to go, and a little bit of what I can offer you, so you can see if they fit together or not. At the bottom of my homepage, you definitely join my email list, so you'll get notified when I do have the new relationship readiness assessment up and running, because it's so close. I've still got 4 tickets open with tech support to get some things finished. It's working great, except for some polishing pieces that I need to have in place before I release it to the world. It's a journey. Anyway, so if you join my email list, you'll be notified when that happens. Also, when you join my email list, you'll get a weekly email from me, which includes a replay of our shows. So that way, in case you miss that show, you get to see it every week, no matter what. So definitely check out my website for that. On social media, you can find me on all the platforms under my name. Instagram's the only one that's different, which is the real Barry Selby. But otherwise, you can find me as Barry Selby on Twitter, now called X, on Threads, on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, of course, always on YouTube, on Clubhouse, and on Pinterest.
Perfect. And then you can find us here live, talking to each other and laughing every week at 1 o'clock Pacific and 4 o'clock Eastern and all the times in between.
Yep.
And then
on YouTube and Facebook, just so people know where to find us, by the way.
Yes, on YouTube and Facebook, and on Going Solo Media, you can see our live show. And then you can also see the repeats on all those places. And then you can take us with you audio on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all your streaming services out there, so that you want to take us to the gym or to the grocery store or to walking.
Driving, yeah, absolutely.
You can listen to our sage wisdom everywhere.
Sage wisdom. Wow, we're upgrading.
Yeah, I think so. I think we're definitely at the sage.
Okay.
So, and we'd also love you to subscribe and like and share with your friends, because everybody's got friends that have dating and relationship problems and questions and concerns. So share our wisdom with them as well.
Please do. Yes. Thank you.
And we will see you all next week.